What if the real reason your legs feel weak isn't age at all, not muscle loss, not just getting older, but something quieter, invisible, a missing signal between your brain and body slowly disconnecting? You try to stand up from your chair, and it takes longer than it used to. You walk across the kitchen, and your balance feels just a bit off. You want to move faster, but your body doesn't respond the way it once did. And maybe, deep down, a small voice inside you wonders, am I starting to fade? You're not alone. This isn't in your head. And it's not your fault. Because beneath the surface, there's a deeper truth science has now confirmed. A specific link between your nervous system, your muscles, and one overlooked nutrient that may be silently draining your strength. A nutrient that, when restored, can help rebuild that bridge between brain and body, sometimes in just 12 hours. This isn't about chasing youth. It's about returning home to your own body and feeling it respond, clearly. Powerfully, like it remembers you. You're still here for a reason, and maybe, just maybe, so is your strength. It happened on a Tuesday morning. The kind where the light filters through the trees just right and everything feels still. Walter stood up from his porch chair, the same chair he'd used for the past 8 years, and something was off. Not pain. Not dizziness, just delay, a tiny wobble in his right leg. A hesitation where there used to be instinct. He didn't fall. But something inside him did. He paused, looked down, and for a split second, he didn't recognize the way his legs moved. They were his, but they felt distant, like listening to your own voice echo through a hallway. Not quite arriving when it should. Walter had always been strong, a former fire inspector, a man who could walk properties for hours, who lifted garden soil without thinking twice, who taught his granddaughter to ride her bike on gravel roads barefoot. But now, just standing up, felt uncertain. And that uncertainty didn't scream, it whispered. Whispered in the way his foot dragged slightly on the carpet, in the way he reached for the banister, out of habit, not need, in the way he walked slower, not because of fatigue, but because something felt out of sync. At first, he shrugged it off. Maybe I slept wrong, he thought. Maybe I'm just stiff from the weather. Maybe this is just part of turning 67. But the thing about slow declines is they don't knock, they settle. That afternoon, Walter found himself staring at the stairs. Just 6 steps, but they felt steeper than they used to. He climbed them, one hand on the rail, carefully, measuring each movement. And when he reached the top, he wasn't winded. But he wasn't proud either. That night, lying in bed, he wondered, was this how it starts? The quiet loss of strength, the slipping away of trust in your own body, not a fall, but the fear of one. The next morning, Walter did something he hadn't done in a while. He sat still, closed his eyes, and listened, not to the world around him, but to the one inside. His knees ached faintly, his ankles were tight, but it wasn't pain that got his attention, it was silence. No pulse, no readiness, just waiting. As if his muscles were waiting for instructions that never came, and that's when he knew this wasn't just aging, this was disconnection. Something, somewhere, wasn't getting through. And the question that rose, gently, firmly, was this: can I come back to myself? Not to who I was 20 years ago, but to who I am when everything works the way it's meant to. That question would change everything. Because sometimes the first step isn't physical. It's the moment you notice, and let yourself ask, what if there's more than just time pulling me away? What if something small, silent, and deeply human can help me return? What if your legs aren't weak, but your brain just can't reach them anymore? That's what Walter kept wondering. Because his muscles hadn't changed overnight. He hadn't stopped walking or lifting or climbing. But something about the way his body responded felt different, delayed, dulled, distant. So he did what most of us do. He looked for answers, searched online. Leg stiffness after 60. Why do I feel off balance? He read about arthritis, circulation issues, even early signs of neurological decline, but none of it fully explained what he felt. Until he stumbled on a phrase he'd never heard before: neuromuscular dysfunction. It sounded clinical, complicated, but as he read further, something clicked. It wasn't that his muscles were failing. It was that the messages from his brain weren't getting through, like a phone call with poor reception. You speak, but the other person hears static. Walter sat with that idea for a long while. Could this really be the root, not weakness, but disconnection? And then he remembered something odd from the past week. He'd told his leg to move, and it had, just a little slower than expected. A fraction of a second, but enough to notice. He read more. He learned that as we age, the lines of communication between our nervous system and our muscles, the very ones responsible for every step, every lift, every adjustment in balance, can begin to fray, not because we're broken, but because those connections need fuel. And one of the most important sources of that fuel is a vitamin many people don't even know they're missing. Vitamin D, not just for bones, not just for immunity, but as a literal bridge between your brain and your body. Walter remembered his last physical. His doctor had mentioned his vitamin D levels were low. He'd brushed it off, thought, I live in Vermont, I get outside. How could I be low on something the sun gives away for free? But here's what he didn't know. After age 60, your skin doesn't produce vitamin D the way it used to. Your gut doesn't absorb it as well. And even if you're eating well, you might still be running low on the one thing that helps your muscles receive the brain's call to action. It was like discovering that the switch was still working. But the wiring had dust on it, and all it needed was a little attention. Walter began to see the puzzle pieces forming. And for the first time in weeks, he didn't feel frustrated. He felt curious. Could something this small, this quiet, be the thing that was silently dragging his movement down? He didn't know yet, but his body was asking for an answer. And he was ready to listen. If you've ever felt like you were doing everything right, staying active, eating well, and still felt weaker, slower, more disconnected, you're not imagining it, you're not broken, you might just be missing something simple. And the good news is this is where the story starts to change. Imagine a wire. It runs from your brain all the way down to your toes. It doesn't make noise. It doesn't demand attention. It just works until it doesn't. That's what happens in neuromuscular dysfunction. The wire, once sharp, once steady, starts to fray, not tear, not break, but weaken. Walter didn't need a doctor to tell him something had shifted. He could feel it. Not in big, dramatic ways, but in the pauses. The extra second it took to start walking after standing. The way his foot sometimes missed the rhythm of a step, the small tremble in his fingers when picking up a glass of water. The body was speaking, but the language had changed, so he dug deeper. Found study after study showing that vitamin D deficiency was linked, not loosely, but directly to poor neuromuscular efficiency. It was the word efficiency that struck him, because this wasn't about losing strength, it was about losing coordination. The connection, one paper explained it like this: vitamin D acts as a key. Without it, the door between your brain and your muscle fibers stays closed, or worse, halfway open. Messages get delayed, jumbled, or disappear entirely. He thought about all the times he'd told his body to move and it did, just not in the way it used to. And suddenly, he had a picture. It was like trying to watch a live stream with weak Wi-Fi. The camera is there, the signal's there, but the feed lags, freezes, jumps. That's what his legs had felt like, out of sync, not because the muscles were gone, but because the signal was poor. One study in neurology showed that restoring vitamin D led to improved lower limb function in less than a day, faster walking speed, easier transitions from sitting to standing, even reduced heaviness in the legs. Walter paused on that line. In less than a day. He wasn't looking for a miracle, but after weeks of slow fading, he couldn't ignore what the science was saying. This wasn't about building new muscle. It was about reactivating what was already there. The next morning, he took his first softgel of vitamin D3 with breakfast, with avocado and eggs. He remembered reading that healthy fats help absorption. And then he went for a short walk, 10 minutes. Sunlight on his arms, no music, just air and motion and hope. He didn't feel anything right away. No sudden burst of power, no lightning bolt. But that evening, while reaching down to pick up the newspaper, he noticed something. He didn't brace, didn't wobble, he just moved, fluidly. It was small, almost dismissible, but it was different. And sometimes that's all it takes. A single moment, a flicker to remind you your body is still listening. It's just been waiting for the signal to return. By the third morning, Walter had developed a quiet routine. He'd wake up, sit on the edge of the bed, and take a moment. Not to stretch, not to push, but just to notice. Were his legs trembling? Did his feet feel heavy? Was there that strange pause before he moved? That morning, the pause was gone. He stood, balanced. Walked to the kitchen without touching the counter. Something had clicked. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic, but it was undeniable. There was more ease in his step, more confidence in his stance. And deep down, a kind of steady certainty that had been missing for months. He didn't tell anyone at first, not even his daughter. Because it almost felt too early to explain, too fragile to define, like trying to describe the taste of a fruit you hadn't had in years. But inside he knew. The protocol he was following, simple as it was starting to work. Take vitamin D3 in the morning, with food that contains healthy fats, a boiled egg, a spoonful of yogurt. A slice of avocado on toast. Then move, not a workout, not a challenge, just motion, 10 minutes outside, preferably in sunlight, walking, breathing, letting the light hit his arms, letting the blood flow. This wasn't about exercise, it was about reactivation, stimulation. Sunlight boosts natural vitamin D production. Movement sends a message to the nervous system, I'm still here, still trying, still alive. He didn't overthink it, he just followed it. Because for the first time, his body wasn't resisting, it was responding. By the end of the week, Walter noticed something else. His posture had changed. He stood taller, shoulders relaxed. No longer leaning slightly forward when walking. No more guarding every movement like it might hurt or misfire. It was as if the silent tension, the constant low-level worry that his legs might fail him, had finally loosened its grip. And in its place, there was room to breathe. He found himself doing things he hadn't planned. Carrying the recycling without thinking, climbing the porch stairs in one motion, reaching for the top shelf without that quiet inner negotiation, can I, should I, these weren't victories to anyone else. But to Walter, they were everything. Because each act, no matter how small, was a conversation, a message from body to mind, from nerve to muscle. From silence to signal, and he began to trust again, not blindly, but slowly, deliberately. He still had moments of doubt, mornings when his ankles felt stiff, evenings when he was more tired than expected, but they no longer defined the day, they didn't drown the progress, because when your body starts to speak again, even in whispers, you learn to listen. And when you listen, you begin to return. If you've ever had a day where something small gave you hope, where your body surprised you with even the slightest ease, let that moment count. Because healing doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just walks, one quiet step at a time. There's a certain kind of tiredness that sleep doesn't fix. Walter had felt it. That dragging sense in his legs, like walking through water. Not pain, not injury, just a heaviness that wouldn't lift. Even on good days, when his balance seemed sharper, his energy would dip. He'd sit on the porch after bringing in the groceries and wonder why something so simple left him drained. That's when he discovered the missing piece of the puzzle: mitochondria, tiny structures inside each cell, little engines that produce energy, not in theory but in the exact physical sense. They are the reason your muscles contract, the reason you move with power, with speed, with ease, and after the age of 60, they begin to slow. Not because you stop moving, but because their function becomes less efficient. They produce less energy, they create more waste, and your legs feel it. Walter had read about this in a research study. The University of Geneva found that restoring vitamin D boosted mitochondrial function by 30% in just 24 hours. 30%. Not after weeks, not after injections or intense treatments. Just one small shift, and suddenly the engine ran cleaner. He thought of it like this: you're driving a car that hasn't had an oil change in years. The tires are fine, the frame is strong, but the motor lags, struggles on hills, and you begin to think maybe the car's just old. But then, someone changes the oil, replaces the filter, and you feel the difference. Not new, but smoother, sharper, capable. That's what was happening inside Walter's legs, not a miracle, but a tune-up. Each time he walked in the morning sun, each time he took his vitamin with breakfast, he was fueling his mitochondria. He didn't need to run, he didn't need to push. He just needed to support the engine that already lived in him. And slowly, his movements began to change. Walking up the stairs didn't demand the same pause. His breathing stayed steady. The burn in his calves came later and disappeared faster. He felt like his body was using energy better, holding power longer, moving smarter, not harder. There was a moment, midway through the week, when he realized something that stopped him in his tracks. He hadn't thought about his legs in hours. They just worked. No calculations, no caution, no whispering worry beneath every step. And that, more than anything, felt like a gift, not to be powerful, but to be present. If you've ever felt like your legs give up before your will does, that you're ready to move, but your body won't follow, you're not broken. Your engine may just be running low. And the good news is, even after all these years, it still wants to run. It just needs the right fuel. Every time you stand up, sit down, take a step, or lift a bag of groceries, something happens inside your muscles. Tiny fibers stretch, contract. And if you're over 60, some of them tear microscopically, just like they always have. That's not damage. It's how the body grows stronger: stress, recovery, adaptation. But there's a catch. Muscles don't just repair on their own. They need builders. And those builders are called satellite cells, little repair crews that wake up when your muscle fibers call for help. They rush in, patch things up, and make those fibers a little tougher than before. At least, that's how it's supposed to work. But with age, these satellite cells slow down. They respond less, sleep longer. And without them, even the smallest strain can take days to heal. A sore back that used to disappear overnight now lingers all week. A twisted knee from stepping wrong on the curb becomes a month-long hassle. Walter knew that feeling. He'd bent to tie his shoe one morning, and his lower back had ached for days. Not injured, just slow to bounce back, like the body wasn't sending out the repair crew. Then he read something that caught him off guard. Vitamin D doesn't just affect nerves or energy. It actually helps regulate satellite cell activity. One study from the University of Birmingham showed that older adults who took vitamin D daily for 2 weeks saw a measurable increase in muscle protein synthesis. 17% more, not from workouts, not from lifting weights, just by waking up the builders inside. Walter decided to test this. Nothing big, no gym, just 10 standing-sitting movements at the kitchen chair each morning. Down, up, breathe, repeat. The first 2 days felt clunky. His knees cracked. His thighs burned, but by day 4 he noticed something. The burn faded faster. The stiffness didn't last. And that slight ache in his back gone, his body wasn't just moving again. It was recovering, repairing, rebuilding. He didn't need to do more. He just needed to do something and pair it with the right fuel, so he made it a ritual. His vitamin with a bit of protein, half a boiled egg, a spoonful of Greek yogurt. Then, movement. He imagined his muscles drinking it in, not just the nutrients, but the message: we're active again, we're growing again, we're alive again. It wasn't about becoming young. It was about becoming responsive, about showing up in his own body and feeling it meet him halfway. If you've ever felt like your muscles take longer to recover, that soreness lingers longer than it used to, know this: your body hasn't given up. It may just be waiting for the right signal, the right movement, and the right support to remember how to heal, because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it begins in the quiet repetition of a morning ritual and the silent promise that yes, we can build again. Blood is life in motion. It doesn't just carry oxygen, it delivers power, strength, recovery. Every step you take, every contraction of your calf, every flex of your thigh depends on it. But what happens when the current slows? Walter didn't notice it at first. It crept in, a tightness in his lower legs, a strange sense of heaviness after just a short walk, the need to pause halfway up the stairs, not from being out of breath, but because his legs felt tired before he did. He chalked it up to aging. Maybe circulation was just something that faded with time. But what he didn't know was that circulation isn't passive, it's responsive. And vitamin D plays a role in that too. One morning, while reading through a study from the Journal of Vascular Research, he found a line that changed everything. Older adults with low levels of vitamin D had significantly reduced blood flow to their legs, even at rest. And when their levels were restored, circulation improved, in some cases within just 1 day. The reason: nitric oxide, a natural gas your body produces to help blood vessels relax and expand, to open up, let blood flow freely, to your legs, to your heart, to your brain. And guess what helps regulate that nitric oxide? Vitamin D. Without it, your vessels stay more constricted, less flexible, less responsive. That means muscles receive less oxygen, less fuel, more fatigue, more strain. Walter saw it clearly now. This wasn't just about muscle, it was about delivery. The nutrients were there, the energy was waiting, But the roadways, his blood vessels, needed support, so he doubled down. Every morning, after taking his vitamin, he'd walk outside, not fast, not far, just enough to feel his legs push against gravity. He called it his second heart. Because each step helped move blood upward. Every muscle contraction squeezed the veins, sending blood back to his heart and oxygen deeper into his tissues. It became a loop. Vitamin D supported blood flow, movement activated it, and the result was clarity, not just in how he walked, but in how he felt. His legs stopped aching mid-stride. The tightness in his calves disappeared. He stopped getting lightheaded when standing too quickly. That alone felt like freedom. He added something else too, breathing. Deep, slow belly breaths, 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out, twice a day. Because deep breathing increases nitric oxide naturally. It softens the vessel walls, tells the body we're safe, we're moving, we're flowing again. He imagined his veins like garden hoses, once kinked, now open, water moving, life returning. And it wasn't just physical, it was emotional. He felt lighter, not just in his steps, but in his spirit. Because when your blood flows, so does your confidence. If you've ever felt that strange heaviness in your legs or that brief dizziness when you rise too quickly, it may not be age, it may be your body asking, can you open the channels again? And the answer often is yes. Sometimes with just a breath, a bit of sun, and the right signal, the current returns. The most powerful movement begins in the brain. Every time you take a step, every time you catch yourself before a stumble, there's a signal behind it, fast, precise, invisible. But over time, those signals start to fray, not because you've stopped trying, but because the insulation around them, the myelin sheath, begins to thin. Think of myelin like the rubber coating on an electrical wire. It protects, it directs, it keeps the signal clean. Without it, the message from your brain arrives scrambled or doesn't arrive at all. That's where vitamin D steps in once more. Because it doesn't just help the nerve connect to the muscle, it helps protect that connection. It helps repair the sheath. Walter read this in a neuroscience journal, and it struck him. The word they used wasn't supplement, it was protector. He remembered the small, strange slips from earlier that year. Trying to step off a curb and landing harder than expected, reaching for a coffee cup and tapping it off balance. They weren't dramatic, but they were signs. His nervous system had started misfiring, and he hadn't known how to listen. But now, he was learning. So each morning, after his walk, he added 3 minutes of simple, focused movement. Marching in place, lifting each knee slowly, swinging opposite arms, touching his left knee with his right hand, then switching cross-body motion, not for cardio, but for connection. Because when both sides of the brain engage, when the left speaks to the right and the body follows, you're not just moving, you're rebuilding. He could feel it, not like a jolt, but like something remembering how it used to speak. And there was one more layer, hydration. He started drinking a glass of water with a pinch of sea salt or lemon each morning, not for thirst, but for conductivity. Nerve signals travel through fluid, through electrolytes. Even mild dehydration can slow them down, but when the body is hydrated, when the circuits are clean, the messages run faster. Walter also noticed something unexpected. He began sleeping better. Vitamin D, it turns out, plays a role in melatonin production, the hormone that tells your brain it's time to rest. And when rest improves, everything else follows: balance, focus, response time. Walter wasn't just moving better. He was thinking clearer, reacting quicker, trusting deeper. Because when your nervous system reconnects, when the lines are restored, it's not just about avoiding a fall. It's about returning to flow, to precision, to self. If you've ever felt like your body moves half a beat behind your mind, like your intentions don't quite land, it's not a lack of effort. It may be a missing link, and when that link returns, so does your rhythm, so does your confidence, so does your grace. There's a kind of strength that begins in stillness. Walter had never thought much about sleep. It came when it came, sometimes broken, sometimes shallow, sometimes not at all. He figured that was just how it went after 65. The tossing, the turning, the waking at 3 a.m. for no clear reason, the mornings where he felt like he hadn't slept at all. But something started to change. It wasn't dramatic at first. He just woke up one morning and noticed his legs didn't feel stiff. His back didn't ache, and he hadn't shifted around all night. It felt small, but it was. Because sleep, it turns out, isn't just rest. It's repair. And vitamin D helps make it happen. Walter had read that vitamin D plays a role in the creation of melatonin, the sleep hormone, the one that sets your internal clock, the one that tells your body, it's time to let go. Without enough of it, your brain struggles to regulate rhythm. Your nervous system stays alert, and your muscles stay tense even in the dark. But when levels are restored, rest becomes easier, deeper, more complete. That was the shift Walter felt. He wasn't just falling asleep faster, he was waking up stronger. And that strength didn't come from effort, it came from recovery. From the hours when your body rebuilds without you knowing, when your muscles knit, your nerves reset, your mind clears. He started to notice something else too. His mood changed. The irritability that used to hover in the afternoons, gone. The fogginess after lunch cleared. The low, quiet hum of sadness he didn't talk about, lighter. Because sleep isn't just physical, it's emotional, it stabilizes, it soothes. It lets your brain release what it doesn't need and hold onto what matters. Each night became part of his recovery plan, not just a break between days, but the foundation for the next one, and he protected it. He took his vitamin with dinner, dimmed the lights an hour before bed. Put his phone away, breathed slowly in the dark. He created space, and his body filled it with healing. If you've ever woken up more tired than when you went to bed, if your nights feel long and your mornings feel short, don't ignore it, because how you sleep shapes how you stand, how you walk, how you heal. And sometimes, the first step towards strength is the moment you close your eyes and trust that your body still remembers show to rebuild in the dark. It was early. The sky still soft with morning. Walter stepped out onto the porch, barefoot. No cane, no hesitation, just the gentle rhythm of soles meeting wood. He didn't think about his balance. He didn't question his movement. He just moved. And for the first time in months, maybe longer, he felt like he was inhabiting his body fully, not managing it, not working around it, just living in it. The transformation hadn't been overnight. It hadn't been magic. It had been quiet, layered, one signal at a time, one breath, one walk, one small act of return, because that's what this journey had been. Not about becoming new, but about coming home, to the feeling of legs that respond when called, to the confidence in standing tall, to the steady truth that the body, when heard and supported, remembers how to rise. Walter didn't feel young. He didn't need to. What he felt was steady, clear, capable. And that was enough, if you've made it here. If you've followed this thread all the way through, maybe something inside you stirred too. Maybe you felt the fatigue that doesn't have a name, the slow retreat of ease, the wondering if your body has quietly closed a door you don't know how to reopen. Let me tell you something. You are not too late, you are not too far gone, and your body is still listening. The nervous system can reconnect, the blood can flow again, the muscles can rebuild, and strength, real, grounded, everyday strength, can return. All it takes is the right signal, the right rhythm, the willingness to believe that biology isn't your enemy, it's your ally. It just needs the chance to remember. So here's a small invitation. Stand near a window tomorrow morning. Let the sun warm your skin, take your vitamin with something nourishing, and move even just a little. Because sometimes that's all it takes to remind your body we're still here, still willing, still strong. And sometimes healing begins not in doing more, but in listening better. If today's journey has reminded you of something inside yourself, something you thought was fading, let that reminder live. Let it stretch. Let it rise. Let it walk forward. Because the body remembers, and now so do you.